Have you ever asked yourself if you should have a maid in the Philippines? Perhaps a young and energetic one who takes care of not just your laundry? Or have you just got the wrong idea about that? Hey, I'm Götz and I moved to the Philippines about 10 years ago. And to all the lonely older gentlemen who never had a maid, I want to lay down the lowdown on what it's like here in the Philippines when you bring such a gem into your home. What do they eat? Where can I find the best ones? What services are included? And most importantly, how much is this going to cost me each month? But before you get too excited, my goal is to provide you with some useful information about one of the most crucial women in a man's household. A woman who can make your life a whole lot easier. So I am sorry to say that this will not be a video filled with dating tips or bursting with funny one-liners and jokes. Most of us are probably familiar with hiring a cleaner or a babysitter who come into the house for a few hours at a time. However, for many, the idea of having a full-time housekeeper might seem like an unaffordable luxury. Additionally, the thought of having a stranger living in your house, privy to all your goings-on, can be pretty unsettling for some. In particular, live-in maids are often seen as a sign of wealth in Western countries. But in Asian countries, on the other hand, maids are quite common even among the lower income brackets. A maid here does more than just keep the house clean and look after the kids. She'll also wash your dirty socks, be your cook, act as your translator, handle your grocery shopping and even stand in line to pay your bills. All for just a few hundred pesos a day. Now, you're probably wondering, where do I find a good maid and what should I be looking out for? How much should I pay her? And if I'm going to be shelling out money, is this luxury really worth it? If you're just a single guy, having your own housekeeper might seem a tad extravagant or unnecessary. But in my view, finding a good maid can be just as important as finding a good girlfriend or wife. Even just having a maid around can likely make your life easier and, as a result, happier. But let's get to the question, who exactly are these maids? Who are these women and girls seeking jobs as housekeepers? Many are actually older. Some are widows, most are single mothers. Especially among the older women, many can't even find simple work in shopping malls. The majority of these maids don't have a good education. A lot of them just have high school diploma. And I say just because it's almost absurd that in the Philippines you even need a qualified school degree to stock shelves in a supermarket. Before you start your search, you've got to think about whether you'd prefer a live-in maid who's there around the clock, or if you'd rather hire someone just for a few days a week. You might initially think just a few hours to start, but then you'll quickly realize you want her to do more. On the flip side, you might consider a 24/7 maid only to find out she has nothing to do. Because if your needs change, you might find yourself back on the hunt. One concern you might have is if your maid is a single mother. How does that work if she's living with you? Will she bring her kids along? No, that's not gonna happen. Her parents will likely look after the kids while she's working. So you don't have to worry about a child running around your apartment or a crying kid clinging to his mother's while she's scrubbing the floor. Now let's talk about how to find a maid. Some of you may be thinking of going through an agency, but in my opinion, agencies aren't necessarily the best source. Sure, they do a lot of vetting like health checks and police clearances, but at the end of the day, you're paying more for the agency. You can easily do the same thing yourself, because workers in the Philippines are used to going through all sorts of paperwork and checks. If you find a maid through a friend or a neighbor's friend, you can ask her to show you relevant documents like her address and an NBI clearance. They will know where to get it. If you want to foot the bill for her, it'll only cost you around $3, so it's no biggie. You shouldn't request a health check after all. You're not a doctor and can't make heads or tails of an X-ray or blood test results. One way to find a housekeeper is through the Facebook marketplace. Almost everything in the Philippines runs through Facebook. Just search for terms like maid or housekeeper on Facebook. Alternatively, you can look for local job groups, but be aware that most posts will be in Tagalog, so it could be a bit tricky if you don't speak the language. You could also ask neighbors or friends. It's not that hard to find someone in your social circle, as a lot of women and girls here are unemployed. After you've identified a potential housekeeper, it's essential to arrange a trial period of 1 or 2 months. Many young girls in particular have little to no work experience. You'll need to explain everything to them quite literally. So it's important for them to understand that this trial period is for both of you to see if you can work together. And I mean strictly in a work relationship. Because if you are a single gentleman, some applicants might be interested in more than just the job. So agree on a 1 or 2 months trial period to see if you can collaborate. Especially since your new gem will usually be at her best during the first few weeks. If you decide to go with a live-in maid, you'll need to hash out the work hours, of course. You've got an employee on your hands, so you will want to stick to the local labor laws. In the Philippines, the maximum is 10 hours working per day with a 1 day off per week. You get to call the shots on when those work hours and off days happen. For example, it makes sense to send her off to the market early in the morning and have her do the cleaning in the evening. That way she can catch a midday siesta when the sun's beating down the hardest. As for her day off, that's up to you both, but Sunday is the usual pick since a lot of Filipinas like to visit family or go to church. If you're feeling extra generous, you could even give her 2 days off per week, but 1 is usually the norm around here. So what can a housekeeper do for you? Well, the standard household chores like cooking and cleaning, sure. But if you're a guy who eats 5 times a day, she's got you covered there too. You could even show her how to whip up your favorite Western dishes by, let's say, showing her some YouTube tutorials or English language cooking sites. Trust me, you'll probably have to show her the ropes because she's likely clueless about Western ways of doing things. But when you think about it, having a maid actually saves you a pretty penny, especially when it comes to dining out. Eating in restaurants or ordering in can quickly run you up to €10 per meal. Cooking at home can make your wallet breathe a sigh of relief. Plus, the food is freshly made. Most guys aren't master chefs, so do the math on how quickly a maid pays for herself. Laundry, that's another money saver. How much do you monthly drop for the laundromat? Over here, Filipinas wash everything by hand, so you don't even need to splash out on a washing machine. I get it, it sounds like a drag to most Westerners, but folks around here are using to doing it this way. Same goes for doing the dishes. Dishwashers are pretty much a foreign concept, so you will also save a lot on appliances you won't need. As for keeping the house spick and span, mopping the floor, dusting, taking out the trash, changing the bed sheets, scrubbing the bathroom, refilling the toilet paper, she got that covered too. Got a garden, she can also lend a hand with gardening tasks like mowing the lawn and watering the flowers. But keep in mind she'll mostly be learning on the job, which is why that 1 to 2 months trial period is key to see how quick on uptake she is. She can also handle your bills, seeing as cash is still king around here. You've probably seen those payment centers everywhere, where long lines of Filipinos settle their bills for electricity, water, phone, TV, insurance, healthcare, you name it. You could hand over your errands to her, she can go shopping, pick up packages or even fetch tools for you. And let me tell you, hitting the local market instead of the big supermarkets will save you a good deal of money too. Moreover, she can double up as your translator when you're dealing with folks whose English is, well, a bit shaky. Say you get a call from a delivery driver and he's going on and on, but you can't quite catch the drift. Just hand your phone to your maid, she can chat with the driver in the local language, making it way easier to give directions to your home. In a nutshell, she takes care of all the stuff you would have to do if she weren't around. And remember, the best maids are like the best employees. You don't have to micromanage them or keep reminding them what needs doing. Some might just sit there until you say, hey, could you please take out the trash and tidy up a bit? But if you find yourself constantly having to nudge them into action, you might as well do it yourself. What I recommend, especially when your maid is new on the job, is to create a to-do list and stick it on the fridge. That way it's right there in the middle of things and she can tick off tasks as they're completed. Make sure to walk her through how you want stuff done. There are bound to be some cultural differences and she might do things that are, let's say, a no-go for you, like leaving food in the pan on the stove overnight instead of popping it into the fridge. But keep in mind, most Filipinos don't even have a fridge. and their grasp of hygiene may be on par with your understanding of quantum physics. As I mentioned before, you will have quite a bit of teaching to do. That's just one example among many. Next point. Let's talk about something you are bound to run into: Filipino time. After her day off, she is supposed to clock in at 8 AM the next day. But don't be surprised if some maids show up late, hitting you with some excuse like the bus was delayed or the road was flooded. Make it clear that tardiness doesn't fly with you and spell out that you operate differently. She needs to understand that we Westerners have our own take on time and punctuality. You might also run into a situation where her family members drop by unannounced while she is working. Make it crystal clear that surprise visits from family at the workplace aren't okay. Lay down the law on what you expect from her and what you won't stand for. And this is key, stick to it. Or it will be like you never said anything in the first place. As for the dough, the going rate for a live-in maid, especially if she's green, ranges between 5,000 and 8,000 peso per month, depending on the city. That is what most Filipino families typically shell out, as it is all they can afford. So if you do the math for 25 working days, it's roughly 200 to 300 peso per day. You might be thinking, what about minimum wage? Sure, the Philippines has minimum wage laws that vary by region and occupation. But keep in mind, most maids here aren't working under formal contracts. I mean, does your cleaner back at home have one? That's why the wages paid aren't necessarily minimum wage, because let's be honest, who's going to check? You might consider giving her a raise after 3 to 6 months or make it an annual thing. As for how much of a bump, well, if you account for annual inflation, you're already doing better than a lot of bosses worldwide. In addition to the monthly salary, employees in the Philippines are entitled to what's called a 13th month's pay, which amounts to a full month's salary. This is typically paid at the end of the year and is obligatory. It's sorta like a Christmas bonus. Some generous bosses even throw in an extra Christmas bonus on top of that. And you also got to cover her social security contributions. This means the SSS for social security, her PhilHealth for the health insurance, and PAK-IBIK, a government savings scheme for future use. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare that'll cost you an arm and a leg, take a breather. Your maid may already be enrolled in these, or she can handle the registration herself. You would just be on the hook for the payment. So you won't have to run around to government offices, and unlikely in the West, these social contributions cost less than 1,000 peso a month. And you can even have your maid go and make the payments each month. Just make sure she shows you the receipt so you know it has actually been deposited into the accounts. All told, a housekeeper will cost you between 6,000 and 9,000 peso a month, even in a big city like Manila. That's about $4 to $6 a day when you convert it. Pretty sweet deal, wouldn't you say? Now you might be thinking this sounds too good to be true, and you've got a point. You've also got to watch out for some potential pitfalls, like theft, for instance. Especially in the beginning, keep your money, valuables, and especially your passport tucked away safely. Remember, your maid comes from humble circumstances, and these things can be pretty tempting at first. The last thing you want is to come home one day and find she is gone, along with your stuff and your cash. Sure, you can file a police report, but let's get real. You're not getting those valuables back, so better safe than sorry. Another thing to keep an eye on is the constant advance payments your maid might ask for. There will be all sorts of reasons. The kid is sick, mom's house got damaged in a storm, you name it. Now, giving an advance here and there isn't a big deal, but some domestic helpers have a perpetual crisis or emergency on their hands. And before you know it, they owe you a lot of work you've already prepaid for. If you don't say anything, it's fine, but when you finally call it out, especially if the debt piles up, she might just vanish instead of working it off. It's like lending money to a Filipino, and it's gone. The same caution applies if you start off paying too much salary. I know many of you are quite generous and might think that 6,000 or 8,000 peso a month is too little. We are talking less than $150 a month here. You might want to start her off at 10,000 peso a month, but this is where your generosity could backfire big time. Fast forward a few months and your housemaid might find herself flush with more cash than she ever expected, and she could actually start feeling quite well off. Come her day off, she might wake up, realize she's got enough savings to coast for a month or two, and just decide to skip work indefinitely. Sounds bonkers to you, I know, but around here that's actually quite common. I've seen this firsthand back when I was in the call center working there. I showed up at December 31st and the office was full. Next day, January 1st, office is half empty. I asked my team leader, is everybody sick or what's going on here? And they just replied, no, they got their 13th month pay yesterday and they are not coming back. Welcome to the Philippines. You might be tempted to give her a series of pay raises if she proves to be a good worker, but you should time those raises good to leave room for future increases. Sure, you think it's nice to pay someone what you reckon they are worth, but once you start raising every 3 or 6 months and then halt it, you essentially pull the rug out from the incentive to keep pushing. You catch my drift. On the flip side, many maids are not treated well. Some endure insane working hours. I know maids who work from 8 in the morning until midnight, taking care of 3 adults and 4 kids 6 days a week. There are maids who can't leave the house at all, except maybe on their days off. Others accidentally break something and have to reimburse the employer, often at exorbitant rates, which can translate into months of unpaid labor. And the go-to response for tolerating such conditions is simply, that's just how it is here. Mainly because they are not aware of their rights and are often afraid they won't find new work. Sadly, it often happens that simple country girls are exploited. So a word of caution, remember that as a foreigner you are not on solid legal ground if your maid decides to go to the police. Don't misuse your economic advantage to exploit your household helper. And then we come to those guys out there thinking, why not have a girlfriend and a maid rolled into one? Well, that's a cute thought. You're looking for someone to cook, clean and love you. Sorry to be blunt, but that's a bit childish, isn't it? When you bring a maid into your household, it's crucial to keep the roles of girlfriend, wife and maid strictly separated. Trust me, doing so saves you a heap of headaches down the line. Your maid's role is also to assist your girlfriend or wife around the house. For that to work smoothly, your maid needs to clearly understand her position within the household. A really good maid becomes more than just an employee over time. She becomes an integral part of your family, often for many, many years. She'll become indispensable in your household, and if you ever find yourself in a situation where your girlfriend and your maid just can't get along, you'll have to seriously mull over who's got to go. It won't be an easy decision, especially if both are good at what they do. The last thing you want is a catfight in your home, trust me on this. And even though I'm not your butler, a little recognition in the form of a like, a nice comment or even a channel membership if you think my videos are top-notch would be much appreciated. If you're thinking to emigrating to the Philippines, you maybe watch some of the other videos I have in my channel. I'm off now preparing next videos. In the meantime, feel free to watch some of my other content. We'll catch up soon. Until then, bye bye.